John McMullen every day at 4:05 here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, where John always answers the call, and he's with us now on 97.3 ESPN with our NFL news and notes brought to you by BMW of Atlantic City. The ultimate driving experience is closer than you think, John. Well, we got some rookie camps opening, so the football is back. We know there's a lot going on. Your piece over at 97.3ESPN.com is about an Eagles rookie who I think a lot of people might not know a whole heck of a lot about, but has an opportunity to play. And I find this story that you wrote pretty interesting because we discussed this the other day on the show after you were on, I think. But if the kid Elijah Qualls, who you wrote about, ends up making the team and contributing, what does that mean for Beau Allen's future with the Eagles?
Well, Beau's hurt right now, so he tore his pec really the week after. The same week the Eagles traded for Tim Jernigan, so that was a lot of bad luck. But, his timetable is going to be into September. There's a good chance that he starts the season on the PUP list. So he's probably not going to be there, at least week one. And we'll see how he progresses from there. And when you come off the PUP list, you basically have 3 weeks to practice, and then the Eagles can determine whether they want to activate him or put him on injured reserve. So right now, he's not in the equation, and this team needs some depth on the interior of their defensive line. Really, the only guy behind Fletcher Cox and Jernigan right now is Destiny Vallejo. So Elijah Qualls has got a real good opportunity to not only make this football team, but contribute at least in a limited way as far as repetitions go.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people realize that Beau Allen might not be ready to start the season, but let's say, all right, now we're in late October, he's ready to go. Do you carry a fourth defensive tackle?
Well, yeah, they're probably going to carry 4. The question is Beau going to be one of that 4? Right now, I would project it as Fletcher and Jernigan, and the backups would be Destiny Vallejo and Qualls. The question is, what happens when Beau's able to go? Now, the problem is with that particular position, obviously, offensive lineman 2, defensive lineman, a torn pec is a serious issue. Because you got to be strong to play those positions. And you can't lift weights when you have a torn pec, or you can't do a number of lifts that you're normally used to doing. So the point there is Beau Allen's not going to be Beau Allen when he's healthy and coming off. Then he's got to get back in the gym and get back to where he was from a strength standpoint. So, again, timing's going to be a big key here, and when they can get him up to speed and get him ready and get him back to where he usually was. I can say, the Eagles were counting on him to be a part of this rotation. There's no question about that. But now they're not going to have him probably for at least a little bit into the regular season at the bare minimum, and somebody else has got to step up.
So, John, you see the possibility then that he could miss the entire season? Do you think that could happen?
I don't think he would miss the entire season unless there's a setback. But I do think it's a more serious injury because of the position he plays. The typical rehab sort of schedule doesn't take into account. You also have to get back into football shape. So when we often talk about it, we mentioned it with Sidney Jones. He might be healthy 6 months after his torn Achilles and everything's repaired, but he hasn't been working out. He hasn't been doing the things he needs to do to get ready to play football again. So there's sort of that after you're healthy, there's sort of that ramping up part of the process to where you have to get back into football shape, and I think people kind of forget that.
So how about Elijah Qualls? As Mike said, you wrote about it on our website, 973ESPN.com, a 6th-round pick. Now, we had Scott Wright on from Draft Countdown. He said that he saw him as a 4th-rounder possibly. What kind of player do you think Qualls can be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who like him. The issue with him seems to be his body type. It's not the the prototypical thing NFL scouts usually look for. He's short. He's got very short arms, and they tend to look at that and say he's going to have a difficult time rushing the passer. But he's tremendously athletic for his size, and he's got a ton of confidence when he spoke to us after he got drafted. And he's got versatility. He can play on the nose. He can play in the 3 technique, so that will help because he can do more than one thing. And I do look at him as a value, being a 6th-round pick, because he probably should have been taken a little bit before that. And if he was 6'3" instead of 6'1", he probably would have been a 3rd or 4th-round pick. That's how closely they look at these things, and things can shift for you depending on little things like that.
Yeah, and I don't know how many guys of that size you've ever seen do backflips and some of the things that he was doing, but he's a heck of an athletic-looking gentleman. Not looking, but some of the things that he could do, you would never envision a man of that size being able to do.
Yeah, if you look at Elijah, the first thing out of your mind is not going to be backflip. You wouldn't think he can do that, but he can, and that's the point. He is. He's amazingly athletic for his size, and I think ultimately that's going to help him, because there's a lot of guys. I covered one of them. John Randall, when I was in Minnesota, he's in the Hall of Fame now. He didn't get drafted, guys, when the draft was 12 rounds. 12 rounds. He didn't get drafted because he was 6 feet tall. And then he got on the field, and they're like, whoa, who is this guy? And, fast forward 10, 12 years later, he's in the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Elijah Qualls, but the point is you shouldn't dismiss somebody because they're not the typical height you're looking for.
John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com. Check out his piece about Elijah Qualls, because he's an interesting – we talked about before, John, in the first hour, about after last year's draft, I don't know if you went up and down the 7 rounds for the Eagles that you said, my expectations for this guy is that he's going to play right away, or this guy. I mean, there was not a guy on the draft board last year that you really thought or felt could come in and make a contribution even. I mean, Wentz you didn't think was going to play. Sayamala, you were like, I don't think, you got 5 starters there. You didn't have a 4th-round pick. Vaitai, I mean, you couldn't even pronounce his name, let alone envision him playing. The only guy, and really, Mills was the only guy of that draft class that came in from day one and got an opportunity, and then, of course, Wentz. But this year, it seems that all the way up and down, you can at least envision some sort of role for all of these guys.
Yeah, and, part of it obviously was the price the Eagles had to pay to go up and get Carson Wentz. So just from the mere fact that they had to give up so much and they didn't have as many picks as they normally have, that contributed to last year. And obviously, if Sam would have not been traded, Carson Wentz probably doesn't play. So there's no question about that. And this year it was different because this year I think it was a shift towards, even though the Eagles, like every other team in this league, will say best player available, blah, blah, blah. I think they were more targeted. And I think they were looking at positions of need. And they did pick guys that could help them at those particular positions. And they need help on the edge, and that gives Derek Barnett a great chance to play. Obviously, we talked a little bit yesterday, Mike, about Rasul Douglas. If he's not a starter, I think the Eagles would be disappointed at this stage just because they have so many issues at the cornerback position. And then we just mentioned even a guy like Qualls all the way down in the 6th round because of the injury to Beau Allen. There's an opportunity for him. So I think they were much more targeted in this year's draft, and it's because they've hit a new phase in building this roster, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot more excitement or buzz, and that hey, I want to get your opinion on we talk about excitement and buzz, and I wonder if Joe Douglas wasn't here, would those excitement or buzz be the same? Like, would we have as much faith? How much cred did Joe Douglas bring, do you think, to this organization?
Well, I think there's two questions to that. I mean, people who understand football and are around the league, he brings a lot of credibility because they know where he came from. They knew his reputation in Baltimore, and they knew who he was around the league. But to be honest with the fan base, they don't know anything about Joe Douglas. They have more confidence because they don't like Howie Roseman. And that might not be fair. It might be fair however you want to look at it. But, I think just because it's spun as not completely Howie's show, I think that makes this fan base a little bit more comfortable.
I agree with you that if they had the same draft class and Howie Roseman was running it, I don't know that people would be quite as intrigued or excited, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I think that's very fair. And I think if the people, look in the mirror and be honest with themselves, they don't know much about Joe Douglas. So it comes down to the fact that people just don't see Howie Roseman as a football guy, so to speak. And they've been told that for so long, most notably by Chip Kelly. A lot of people believe that. It's got to be a group that can work together, and there's always got to be more than one person. In other words, Joe Douglas can't do all the work. Howie Roseman can't do all the work.
But do you think Douglas
do the heavy lifting?
Do you think? And by the way, a couple scouts got let go too, and I'd like you to comment on that. But do you think this is clear that Douglas's voice is louder than maybe we had thought?
No, it's as loud as we were told it was going to be. It's his draft board.
Well, the fans were almost like, I'll believe it when I see it, because so many people look at Howie as this insecure guy that can't allow someone else to say, I'm picking this guy. It's that it was how the buck stops with Howie.
Yeah, and a lot of that is fair, to be honest, because his history has been where he's had feuds with a lot of different people in this organization. And I think it's fair to question how he's worked with people long term simply because it never seems to work out. And there's still an opportunity this doesn't work out. You're still in the honeymoon period. If one of these guys, and it starts with Derek Barnett, if Derek Barnett fails, the honeymoon's over. And you're going to see fingers pointed. At least that's Howie's history. And we'll see how that shakes out down the line. And he does have to prove that. And I think Jeffrey Lurie's kind of told him that, because one of the caveats that got him back in the position of power was to hire a guy who was going to handle the day-to-day operations of the scouting staff, and that's Joe Douglas. And he did it, and it seems to be working out. But with Howie Roseman, you got to wait and see, because he's won a lot of sort of battles and power plays, and the names, and some of them are very familiar. He's struggled in the past to work with people long term.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 Eagles insider. So we're a week away from rookie minicamp starting, John. And I saw an item today that said that John Lynch with the 49ers is wasting no time. He's already signed 5 of his draft picks. What's the timetable of the Eagles signing some of their draft picks? And is there a concern that there may be a protracted negotiation with any of those guys?
No, the 2011 CBA pretty much eliminated contract holdouts for rookies. Everything's scaled. Last year it was bizarre because of the Joey Bosa situation. It's almost impossible to hold out now because everything is structured to the point. And that's why you see guys before the new CBA, you would see rookies not signing till well into training camp. Now, generally, you get them done before rookie camp starts. And you'll see the Eagles probably sign the vast majority of their rookies before things even start next Monday. Next Friday, excuse me. It's very easy to sign your draft picks in today's environment, and it's really more of a rubber stamp than anything else. You don't have to worry about holdouts any longer.
Hey, John, yesterday we discussed a little bit Stephen Daniels off waivers. I just want to get your take on whether or not he's a linebacker, by the way, for the people out there listening. They're very thin at linebacker. Is he a guy? He was a 7th-round pick a couple of last year, missed all of last year. They need some depth there, but is he a guy that you think can make the team, or is he just a camp guy?
Well, we have to see. I mean, that's what I kind of said yesterday. He fits in with the Joe Douglas mode of production at the college level because he was tremendously productive at Boston College. He was a very good player there, 7th-round pick in Washington last year, missed the entire season with a torn labrum. So you kind of have to see, one, is he healthy? If he is healthy, he's a inside linebacker. He's 5'11", 240, so he's not going to play anywhere else. So you look at him, and he's going to be pushing Joe Walker. So it comes down to, one guy's coming off the shoulder injury, another guy's coming off the torn ACL. One of them's got to be the backup to Jordan Hicks. So right. I think we'll have to see how it shakes out. But certainly they want to at least have someone to push Joe Walker, not just give him the job.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up. What about Joe Walker? I mean, he was a 7th-round pick last year. A lot of accounts said that he looked good in camp, but we don't know much about him. Are they relying on did they like a 7th-round pick that much? I know it's a backup middle linebacker, but Jordan Hicks has not been the healthiest guy throughout not only his NFL career, his college career either. It seems that depth at that spot could be, very necessary.
Yeah, I mean, depth everywhere in the NFL is necessary. It only takes one play and somebody's gone. And you're right with Jordan. Jordan basically last year was the first year he was completely healthy, and that was a pleasant surprise for the Eagles, and obviously played at a tremendously high level. But Joe was going to make the team. There's no question. He was going to make the final 53, and then he tore his ACL at the end of the preseason. So they did like him. He was going to be here, and we'll see how he recovers from that injury. It's obviously a significant injury, but people can generally, with the advances of modern medicine, it's not that crippling injury it once was. So he'll try to pick up where he left off when he was going to make this football team, and certainly this coaching staff knows him and they like him. So I think he has a leg up on a guy who's coming in off waivers that they don't know yet.
Of course, quick NFL news and notes. John McMullen covers the league nationally for FanRag Sports NFL. John, a couple quick hits from you about Riley Cooper in Tampa. We're going to see the return of Riley to the NFL?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he's a 29-year-old who hasn't played since he left Philadelphia, and he's in a Tampa Bay rookie camp as a tryout player. So that tells you all you need to know. Remember, the off-season rosters are bloated anyway at 90, and he's not on that roster. He's trying to get on a 90-man roster. So he's got a long way to go, and God bless him for trying, but I think we've seen the last of Riley Cooper in the NFL.
Did former Bears quarterback Jay Cutler, did he find his calling, John McMullen? He's going to be that analyst now?
Yeah, I mean, Jay's a really smart guy, and I think it's people will find it surprising because of the way he was portrayed, and I wrote about it today, and I said I think it's ironic because his nonverbal communication is horrible. If you saw him on the field and things would go awry for the Bears, he would just have these horrible facial expressions, and it just didn't come across well. But he's incredibly well-spoken. I think he could eventually turn into a very, very good analyst, and we'll see how it develops. But he certainly is not under as much pressure as Tony Romo, because he's not going to be next to Joe Buck or or anything of that nature. He's going to be on one of the lesser crews, and hey, he still might get that phone call. He mentioned that he didn't officially retire today, and if there's a sort of a Teddy Bridgewater-like injury somewhere, then I think that's where Jay Cutler could possibly answer the phone. Like, you guys don't want to answer the phone. He probably would answer the phone if somebody needed a quarterback. But the bottom line in this league is he wasn't going to be a starter. And if you think about how coaches think about backup quarterbacks, there's two kinds. There's sort of the veteran mentor type for the young guy, if you have a young starter, or the opposite, as a guy you just want to come in if the starter sprains an ankle or something like that and can run your offense for 2 weeks and not create waves. And Jay just doesn't fit into either of those categories.
John McMullen with us. I'm seeing word out of Washington, John, that the Redskins may not hire a new GM. They may do it with the in-house personnel and not have a true GM. Can you win without an actual GM?
Oh, sure. I mean, GM is just a title, and there are different levels of general manager. I mean, the Eagles don't have a general manager, and Bruce Allen has the power. The question is, can you win with Bruce Allen? My answer to that would be no. But can you win in theory without a GM? Sure. You can call him the executive vice president of football operations. And varying GMs have different levels of power. Some are truly the traditional GM, the way you think about it, and they run the football side of the organization. Then there's coaches like Pete Carroll, and Andy Reid and people like that, where in essence their GMs actually work for them. So there's all kinds of different setups around the NFL, and the GM position as a whole is really dependent on how much power you really have.
Johnny Mac at JF McMullen on Twitter for all of his Eagles and NFL coverage. Check him out at FanRag Sports NFL. And, of course, 97.3 ESPN.com. Check out his piece right now on the Eagles' sixth-round pick. That's Elijah Qualls, and how his opportunity could be there for the taking. John, have a good weekend. And, of course, Eagles minicamp begins on Friday. Looking forward to that, pal. Take care.
All right. Have a good weekend, guys. Thanks.
All right.